By September 10th, 2001, the CIA knew exactly who Osama bin Laden was, where he operated, and why he was dangerous, and yet he was still at large. Everybody knows about 9/11 and its aftermath. Everyone has seen it on Instagram Reels, learned it in school, or somewhere on the internet. But one thing that no one really talks about are the events prior to this catastrophic event, where lives were lost pointlessly in the name of jihad. I will discuss the events leading up to September 10, 2001 and discuss certain things thereafter, after part 3. During the Cold War, when an ideological battle between the free market and the command economy was raging, both the United States and the Soviet Union were fighting for influence around the world, leading to many conflicts such as the Vietnam War, the war in Korea, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and much more. The Soviet Union, wanting to expand its sphere of influence around the globe, which it did in Central Asia for most of its life, set its eyes on a country which it said no one can conquer: Afghanistan. The problem with trying to put your foot in Afghanistan is thinking that you would finally be the one to do it. The British could not do it, and neither could the Russians. Adding fuel to the fire, the ideology of communism eradicates the concept of God. And one thing no one should forget about Islam is that you cannot erase God from the minds of Muslims. Atheism and Islam will never mix. However, there was a small group of communists in Afghanistan, and they propped up their own communist government. And, obviously, this was met with such great resistance. And the Soviet Union was willing to jump in to help. What happened in Afghanistan wasn't a mistake. It was a short-term solution with long-term consequences. And on the Christmas Eve of 1979, Soviet troops rolled in to conquer the Afghan land in order to help out their communist brothers. Washington was soon notified about the invasion, and due to the Truman Doctrine in 1947 to contain communism wherever in the world, the Reagan administration had to find a way to not engage in direct confrontation against the Soviet Union while still preventing the communists from spreading their ideals. Coincidentally, a resistance movement sprung up in order to combat the invading atheists, and the Afghan Mujahideen was born, and this was the perfect opportunity. To fight the Soviets without firing a single shot, the US chose a controversial partner. Ronald Reagan authorized the covert funding of the Mujahideen fighters, signing the now declassified NSDD-166. Other intelligence agencies that were working with Uncle Sam also felt the same way about the Soviet invasion. If Afghanistan fell to communism, who was next? Pakistan? And then India. That is why the ISI and the GID worked covertly with the CIA. The CIA sent cash, advanced communication systems, guns, mortars, and stingers with the best heat-seeking technology at the time. The ISI would then transport the equipment from Pakistan to the eastern regions of Afghanistan so that the rebels can collect the weapons and also be trained on how to use it. This is to avoid the Soviets from finding out that the United States was involved. But the Soviets didn't really need to take that long to figure it out. The GID, led by Prince Turki Al Faisal, also chipped in with Saudi Arabia's oil money to fund the rebel fighters. This is where the jihad turned in their favor. The Mujahideen engaged in guerrilla warfare with the Russians, taking advantage of the uneven terrain and leveraging the mountains to their advantage. Spetsnaz forces used their helicopters to chase the fleeing Afghans but was not as successful due to the Stinger missiles shooting the helicopters down. As the conflict went on, the image of the Red Army being invincible was slowly starting to shatter among the international community. This was a humiliation for the Soviet Union, in the same way America was humiliated after Vietnam, which was also one of the main motivations of the funding. Since Gorbachev took power in the 1980s, he wanted to pull out of Afghanistan. The Soviet economy was failing, technology was years behind the computerized United States, and they spent $500 billion cleaning up the nuclear meltdown of Chernobyl in Soviet Ukraine, which further crippled their already dying economy. The Soviets eventually pulled out of Afghanistan before its dissolution in 1991, and the vast amount of money given by CIA and the Saudi intelligence agencies, and along with the large arsenal of weapons given to the Afghan rebels, was still at their disposal by the end of the conflict. One man watching all of this wasn't a general nor a politician, but he understood something they didn't. Osama bin Laden, a wealthy Saudi whose father owned the Bin Laden construction company, was involved in the Afghan resistance by establishing networks and receiving training. He would later use his vast wealth and influence to become America's worst nightmare, and would be remembered for years after his death. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, because I'll be making a part 2 and part 3 along with other pieces of history such as the Iran-Iraq War and Saddam Hussein's Iraq. So if you don't want to miss that, please subscribe to my channel and I'll release those videos promptly. Thanks for watching.